Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today we are here for the 21st episode of this season and we will be discussing the 5th round of the World Cup, the Druivencross in Overijse. And as usual I am joined by Twan.
Hello.
And Issam.
Hey everybody.
As said, the 5th round of the World Cup took place in Overijse, nicknamed the Moeder der Crossen because it was the 84th time actually that there was a race on this parcours. Oldest Belgian race, first edition, was held in 1960, so surely a classic. Issam, tell us what went down in this year's race.
Indeed, truly a classic, and what we could see in the beginning of the race that Quinten Hermans and Daan Soete were the stronger guys in the beginning of the race at least. Hermans then tried to make a gap on the other guys, and behind them it was Michael van Toerenhout and Eli Iserbyt that were able to join him. So we had a group of three, and those three were actually looking very solid. At least I was having the feeling that those three would be the ones that will be battling out for the victory. Toon Aerts, a little bit more behind. He was struggling a little bit in the beginning of the race. Definitely not the start I think that he wanted. And then a crash of Quinten Hermans. And that would actually kind of make his race in a way from bad to worse. He had to change his shoe as well when he had to change his bike. And we would not see him back in contention for the podium. Then we had two guys in front with Eli Iserbyt and Michael van Toerenhout, and Toon Aerts eventually was able to bridge the gap to them. And then there were a couple of attacks from Iserbyt and also from van Toerenhout that put him under pressure. In the end, it didn't really hamper Toon Aerts, and he was able to make sure that it was a group of three. Van Toerenhout was very strong. Iserbyt was also looking very good, and Laurens Sveek, that we didn't really see in the race, was able to bridge the gap to the three. So we had a group of four. Toon Aerts saw the danger of having three guys of Pauwels Sauzen and put them under pressure when Van Toerenhout had an attack. And when Aerts actually in the last lap tried to make Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout crack, Iserbyt did a little bit what Aerts did in Zonhoven, countered his attack and was able to, I think, give the mental blow to Aerts. Van Toerenhout was able to pass him as well, and then we had a battle between these two teammates for victory. But in the end, it was there was nothing they could do to the World Cup leader and still the World Cup leader of the Cyclocross season in 2021. It's Eli Iserbyt that wins the race with Michael van Toerenhout in second and Toon Aerts a strong third.
Let's talk about that final part of the race a bit. Michael van Toerenhout launched inside of Toon Aerts, who was in second place. I think in the end it didn't really matter because Toon Aerts was cooked, but I think it was still, once again, it shows Van Toerenhout really playing the B guy in the team of Pauwels Sauzen, really letting, or basically parking it there, running really slow. Nothing Aerts can do, but Aerts was cooked. But Van Toerenhout, I think it really shows he is basically a wingman for Iserbyt throughout most of the races.
I think you have to go a little bit further than that, and I think that all starts when Aerts decides to power it up the asphalt climb, but isn't really able to gain any advantage on Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout, just really tiring himself out, and from there on out he was just over the limit, and Pauwels Sauzen could play it. For me, it was a bit of an interesting move by Van Toerenhout to send it in the inside there, and then he just parks it in the corner and runs a bit slower. It's really unfortunate to see because the race is over from there because there isn't enough time to close it.
Yeah, but the race wasn't made there. I think Aerts was already done. It was I think Van Toerenhout also realized that he maybe threw away a bigger chance of winning the race. And indeed, it's a bit of wingman tactics in a way that he helps Iserbyt out, which is definitely good, I think. But today he just had a bigger chance of winning than being second 9 seconds behind. So it's questionable tactics, but I think there are clear rules in Pauwels Sauzen. I think Iserbyt is the leader for the World Cup, and that is how they go into the race. So in the end, they get the win, and I think they are happy because Zonhoven was a bit more disappointed for them.
I agree that Aerts was already tired. I mean, as Twan said, he powered up that asphalt climb and ever since didn't look great. But if you look back a lap before, in the penultimate lap, he pushed for almost the entire lap and was trying to drop Van Toerenhout and Iserbyt, but it never really worked out. So I think from there on, Aerts was really done. About the move itself, I don't really have a problem with Van Toerenhout launching it up the inside there. I just think it's really boring that he then, like mid-corner, he almost comes to a halt, and then, well, you can see Iserbyt is sprinting and Van Toerenhout is just jogging and thinking, well, okay. And then after that, he accelerates and then goes for it, and he comes relatively close to Iserbyt, and then ultimately he knows when they're going to the final downhill that the gap of 3-4 seconds is going to be close, and he sits up. And personally, in my opinion, Van Toerenhout could have definitely challenged Iserbyt or maybe even won. But yeah, Iserbyt is clearly the leader in that team, and Van Toerenhout is, well, there to support Iserbyt, because you could see it somewhere, I think it was in lap 5 or 6 of the race. We were going into this narrow downhill. Aerts was in P2, he got dive bombed by Iserbyt, but instead of Iserbyt slowing down and letting the gap for Van Toerenhout, Iserbyt closes the small gap that Van Toerenhout had. So yeah, it really shows that Van Toerenhout is really supporting Iserbyt there, and that Iserbyt is the clear leader within the team. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad decision, but I think it's bad to see as a fan of the sport. I would like to see these two guys go head to head, fight it out. But Van Toerenhout, except for Tabor last year, is never allowed to do that, because Mette Penningen wants Iserbyt to win, because Iserbyt is kind of the face of the team by now.
Yeah, I only have to agree with that. It's a perfect analysis of the situation, I guess. But I think Zonhoven played a big role in this. I think Zonhoven, they were not happy with Aerts winning there, despite the fact that probably the race could have gone another way if they played it a little bit more tactically better, I guess. And I think that just today there was only one goal, and the goal was to win the race. And I think the goal was to win the race with Iserbyt, and we could clearly see that. And only fair play to Iserbyt. I mean, at the end, he was, I guess, the strongest. I think Van Toerenhout was strong, but not strong enough. So yeah, I think overall it doesn't hurt the sport. It's obviously not nice to watch, especially if you want an open race. But overall, it was okay. It was clean.
I agree that it was clean, but I mean, it's just so frustrating to watch it. Like you're watching a Formula 1 race with two guys at the front, but one isn't allowed to attack the other because the team has told them so. It's just super frustrating to watch. I want to see Van Toerenhout fight with Iserbyt for that win, and not basically have Van Toerenhout open the door for Iserbyt to win. About Toon Aerts, I would also like to mention that I think Toon Aerts was super strong today. Of course, in the last lap he was cooked, but we shouldn't forget that he spent quite a while chasing. At the beginning of the second lap, he went into the pits, had a bike change. I don't really understand the timing of that bike change, because it was in a pretty big group. You could see that Pauwels Sauzen was applying pressure. He changes his bike and then ends up behind Corné van Kessel. And basically from there on, he's stuck behind Corné van Kessel, and at some point he was 20 seconds down. He manages to come back, but then ultimately I think that also played a factor in his race.
Yeah, it's just extra energy you have to use, right? And you see that eventually, like, Toon Aerts is building up the steady lap times, and I got the idea that, like, he is going to come back, but then you have to see what happens in the last laps. And I thought in the second to last lap he applied pressure at various points, and it looked very good. So I had a lot of hope going into the final lap for him, but it just, yeah, tactical mismanagement of the energy, I guess, there, and it was just done.
Bike changes in general played a pretty big role, considering the pit lane here. It was pretty slow. You lost all your momentum. It was really bumpy. So overall, especially in the women's race, we'll come to that later, pits played a big role. For the men's race, I could see the need to change twice a lap, considering it was raining and the bikes got pretty muddy. At some point they were changing twice a lap, sometimes they changed once a lap. But yeah, I think overall Toon Aerts, it was unfortunate for him, and basically that's kind of how his season has been going. He's strong, but it just rarely falls together for him. And today, I mean, I think if he had won, he could have taken back 10 points in this classification coming back. And now he loses 15 points in this classification. And I mean, of course, there's still a lot of races to go, but personally, I think that Iserbyt he's already a race clear. So I think it will be very hard to still beat Iserbyt. Yes, there's still 11 races to go, but I think what I've seen now from Iserbyt, and especially from Aerts and Hermans, it's just hard to see Iserbyt lose over 40-point lead.
Yeah, especially as the big three will come back, like the higher point differences might be taken away, and it's just very hard. And indeed, you're going to need some very bad weeks by Elie Iserbyt to actually be able to get back in this.
And the next race is, of course, Tabor, which is a parcours that normally does favor Elie Iserbyt over Toon Aerts and Quinten Hermans. So, yeah, that makes it a bit tough, especially because Quinten Hermans today also takes another hit in the classification. Once again, super strong, but that shoe change really messed up his race, and especially the mistakes he made after that, Issam.
Yeah, I think it was overall a strong start, and overall was a strong beginning of the race from Hermans, but then yeah, he had the issue with the crash, then the shoe change, then he was just not really in the rhythm because he was hanging around a little bit with Van Kessel, and that is obviously not his level. So we know that he can go faster than that. So yeah, it was just not his day. But I think that it doesn't mean that it's gonna be the rest of the season like this. So he will come back stronger, and he will be able to bring the fight to Iserbyt, Van Toerenhout and Aerts for sure.
Let's run down our entire top 10 then. We had that win for Elie Iserbyt in front of Michael van Toerenhout. Another 1-2 for the Pauwels Sauzen bingo team. Toon Aerts, the Trekpauwels Lions, on the third spot of that podium. Then we find Laurens Sweeck ahead of Quinten Hermans. Sixth place went to Lars van der Haar, who rode a good recovery race after a crash at the start. Seventh place, Corné van Kessel ahead of Niels van der Putten. Ninth place, very excellent performance by Cameron Mason ahead of Ryan Kamp. Let's briefly touch upon Laurens Sweeck. I was weirdly surprised by his race. First of all, I was surprised that he could keep up the pace. He had a slow start, was catching the leaders, he was lapping quicker than the leaders. Then he eventually joined them, was leading up the climb, and then just disappeared again. It was super weird to see because the lap times he was putting in were solid. When he finally comes into the game, he disappears out of it as quickly as he appeared there.
I was also very surprised that he was able to get up there. Very solid performance by him on parcours that usually I wouldn't say suits him at all, and played a good part in the tactics that Pauwels Sauzen were able to play, forcing Toon Aerts to put the pace back on again, because otherwise with three of them in the group it was going to be even harder to maintain a good position there.
Laurens Sweeck, of course, skipped the USA World Cups. Would you guys say that decision paid off?
Maybe not really now, and I don't think you will see it right now. I think we still have to do a couple of races to get the idea if it really helped him or not, because I have a feeling that a lot of these riders that really had this very busy program already so early in the season that they will feel it going towards the end of November, maybe December. And I think that is maybe what Sweeck also wants, that he wants to be a bit stronger there, so he's able in the stronger period, or at the busier period, I would say, that he can capitalize on the tiredness of other riders.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. It's indeed the case. You see it in most seasons, and this year especially with a very stacked calendar, that towards the Christmas period or just after that you see a drop-off in performance by certain riders who have ridden a lot of races. Sometimes it happens at the World Championship, sometimes already a bit before. But I think for Sweeck, he was really hoping, or at least that's what he said, he hoped to be up there for the win or winning in Zonhoven and in Ruddervoorde, and also this weekend, because this would be the weeks when Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout would be tired. It's quite the opposite. Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout have been up there, whilst Sweeck has been lacking a bit. So I don't know. Overall, I'm not sure with Sweeck. I think he obviously made that choice. It might pay off long term, but short term, what he at least said in the media that he hoped to be good, it didn't really pay off so far. A couple of riders we have to mention within the top 10. Let's start with Niels van der Putten. He had some tough weekends, but an 8th place here is certainly an improvement, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is, because I mean, with how Overijse is, that it's very technical, and the fact that he has some power in the legs, I kind of expected him in the top 10, but the only thing that he should be doing is not start very fast, and I guess We didn't really see him at the front, so he did a good job there, and then he was just able to bring home a top 10, and that is basically what these guys have to do, especially the under 23. They have to just try to, do those races, make sure that they get the experience, and just get themselves into top 10s, and that is where they can learn the most if they are able to do that, because only from that they can grow.
Then, in my opinion, at least the standout performance here today, Cameron Mason from Trinity, ending 9th here. We had him on our podcast last year, and he said he hoped to get a World Cup top 10 at some point in his career. Well, he did so today. Certainly a very good performance, especially considering he needed to start from one of the back rows that he didn't have much UCI points. Well, he certainly has a lot of UCI points in his bag now. What a ride, great lap times, great surge forward. I'm lost for words because Cameron Mason, really a very, very strong performance today.
We spoke about it earlier this season in Zonhoven and Rutherford, a very impressive rides to get back to up to where he got, and today it was even more amazing. I didn't think Cameron Mason was at this level quite yet, and he will be working his way up the starting grid, and it's only going to help him, and hopefully he can keep this form going and keep storming forward in these races, because this is an amazing achievement for him.
I think the first opportunity he has is tomorrow on the Koppenberg. We'll take a short look ahead at that a bit later, but the under 23 have their own race. It's even a bit more climbing than what we have here. Van der Putten and Kamp aren't the lightest riders. I think Cameron Mason definitely has a shot at the podium there if he can put in a similar ride to what he did today.
It will be a very interesting race for most of these riders. It's the first time they have done it in a long time. Also, if you exclude the under 23 World Championships, of course. And I think it will be really fun to see them race head to head again. It has been a while, and it will be a great experience for them as well to race for victories.
A final mention here today would be on Joshua Dubois, ending 14th after a very rapid start. To me, it's not a surprise to see him drop back. He usually has this tendency ever since he was racing in the under 23 category. Nevertheless, I think a 14th place here is very solid.
Yeah, I think it's a very strong performance from him. He had very good races in Coupe de France. That was where he had some good races. I think he won like 5 races there or something. So his preparation has been good, and I think top 20 is definitely a very good result. And I'm very interested to see if he can. He's already 25, so I think he still has some potential like to grow in, and I guess we're gonna find out if he's able to make sure that he's able to get in those top 15 places and maybe even a top 10.
Let's proceed to talk about the women's race then, because we had a phenomenal race there, and it's certainly a day that goes into the history books. Tell us about it, Twan.
It was a very good start by Denise Betsma, and she got aided by the fact that a lot of women went into the pits the first time around. It was a huge mess, and it cost them 10 seconds or even more, and then they were held up behind slower riders that didn't go into the pits. So it was a very good tactical decision for her to go straight on. With her, it would be Vos and Pieterse, and they would try and make the connection. Eventually Betsma would make a mistake, and Vos and Pieterse were able to come back and also drop her when she made another mistake. It was very un-Betsma-like performance with many smaller mistakes and even some bigger ones. And it would be Vos that put the pressure on Pieterse, who just couldn't quite hold it. And we saw our first Hungarian winner in the World Cup, Katablanka Vos, ahead of Puk Pieterse. And Lucinda Brandt was able to dispatch of Denise Betsma and claim the final spot on the podium.
Let's start at the beginning of the race, which was the start. We saw that there were a lot of riders who had chosen for either high tire pressure or a different tire thread even for the tarmac climb that we had, and then that cobble section after that. But the carnage in the pit was created, one, by the fact that there were so many riders, but two, by the fact that Van Empel, who was the first rider to change bikes, her bikes got tangled up. It was hard to see precisely what happened, but I think her bike got tangled up with another bike, and that basically led to a traffic jam in the pits. And basically from there onwards, Brandt, Kastelein and Alvarado, they were only chasing. For them, their race was really over before it had properly started. They were running behind the rest ever since that incident in the pit.
Yeah, I mean, Brandt was really hampered with the start and especially in the beginning of the race. But I definitely think that you could see that she also had the fighting spirit, and she had an okay day. So she was really able to make ground back. She was in that group with Honsinger and with Burquier and also Kastelein. But then was just able to kind of bridge to at the end Betsema and able to overtake her and get a podium. So I think for her definitely it wasn't a bad day because it was really damage limitation. For others that were involved or were hampered, it was a little bit less good. But if we just focus purely on Brandt right now, I think it was a solid race for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think Brandt, her race was solid. She didn't lose that much time after that incident in the first lap, but we should really focus on that battle between the front three because, I mean, we had Betsema leading for a while until she made a mistake, and it was a very unnecessary mistake in my opinion. There was this super slippery downhill. It wasn't even that steep. Then you had a hairpin, and then you went back up, and it was very clear to me that there was no grass there. There was no point in riding because you couldn't ride it rapidly. Yet Betsema, who had a 7-8 second lead over Vos and Pieterse, decided to try and ride it, and then ultimately slid and crashed, and ever since then it went downwards from her. I think she should have played it safe. I think after that she never really got into a rhythm, and she lost her rhythm there, and ever since she never really played a role anymore in the race and was just riding backwards, making mistake after mistake after mistake.
I don't necessarily think that the riding part was the mistake, because I think you saw Pieterse and Vos do sort of the same thing. The big difference there was, though, that Betsema was going really wide and she had no place to hold on and grab onto to get a little bit of extra balance when she needed it, whereas Pieterse and Vos took a tight line around the corner and were able to use the pole on the inside. They were able to use it to swing around it, carry the momentum, and go back up. And Betsema just kept going too wide there, just had nothing to refine her balance on, and I think that is the biggest mistake she had through that section.
I mean, I can understand the riding to some extent, but running is just so much safer and it's not slower because you can't ride fast there. So I think it was unnecessary for her, especially to take the risks in trying to go all the way on the right side there. But regardless of that, I think the most showing moment of the race was when Betsema was still leading, and then after the pit she just got overtaken by Pieterse and Vos, and they really just, in the downhill, they were so much faster than Betsema. It just really showed that would be the day for Vos and Pieterse. Ultimately, between Vos and Pieterse, sure, they entertained us, but overall, Vos was just that bit stronger. You could see it that Pieterse really had the slightly better technique, but Vos had the slightly better power, and on a tough course as Overijse, lots of climbing, lots of mud, Vos, I must say, really had the upper hand because of that power.
Yeah, when we came actually in that 1v1 situation, in a way, for me it was a bit clear that it would be Vos that would win, because despite Pieterse actually having a great season, it is almost every race that we know that our last couple of laps are going to be a little bit less than the first couple. So I had a lot of confidence in Vos, but let's just put that away and just talk about Vos in general. It was a really good race from her, and there were a lot of things that she did really well. I think the corner where Betsema actually crashed, she controlled the bike quite well. There were not so many mistakes that she made overall. And also things where she was struggling with a lot in the beginning of the season already are going way better. So I think she did a good job also taking the rest and now coming back very strong. So I think the strongest has won, and I'm really looking forward to see her in the European Championships.
I have to say I noticed that differences as well. I mean, obviously she had quite some issues with her technique. It cost her potentially a world title last year in the sand, but she's working with Lars Boom this year, and I could especially see there was this one off-camera part with a corner, and usually Vash just follows the main line, but it was clear that the main line didn't work anymore. I saw her looking for green first. Well, she found out that that wasn't working either, and then the lap after she started running it, and Pieterse, who was trying to ride an alternative line, was a bit slower. So I can already see that Vash is improving in terms of her instinct and trying to find out these tricks that green is grip, which means good, and that you don't necessarily always need to go in the deep muddy rut. And I thought that that was very good to see, because we've said it, like, I think for the last 2-3 years, somebody really needs to work with her, and it looked like that finally happened.
And we always did know that she had the power to be very good. We saw it a few years ago, I think already is, in Tabor, where she was able to go quite far into the race. And yeah, it's just an amazing performance. And I think even if Brand didn't have to pit, she would have won quite comfortably like she did now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And about Pieterse, I mean, Issam almost said it all. I would like to add that Pieterse, well, in terms of bike control, she is amazing as well. We all know that she can bunny hop and those type of things. Like the way she corners is just so special. And I mean, it all tells. I used to race against Pieterse in youth cyclocross races, and normally, of course, you practice the course. But there was a snowy race, and then course practice is even more important, but there was a traffic jam, and she arrived there 15 minutes before the race. She didn't warm up, she just pinned on her bib number and started the race, last row, and she still comfortably won over 30 seconds. And that was against riders like Sherin van Anrooy, who also have an instinct for racing. It just shows, that's just an example, and you can see it here as well, that Pieterse also has this sublime bike handling. I honestly wouldn't know who has a better overall bike handling. Sure, Vos is great in terms of late minute stopping and cornering, but Pieterse cornering is great and she can bunny hop. Well, Pieterse, I don't know if you guys would be able to come up with anyone who has a better bike technique in the women's category.
I think her teammate Alvarado is the one who I'd say is the closest, maybe better. But the rest, those are certainly the two where I'm like, oh damn, they can handle a bike, and it's I don't think the others are like on the same level.
I would agree with that. Alvarado definitely has a great technique. Let's briefly touch upon her race. I mean, she obviously came back after some sort of injury, a bit mysterious what it exactly was. She was good in Zonhoven, but I think it's fair to conclude that Overijse was just a bit too much for her, considering that she was out for a while.
Yeah, I'm curious how it's gonna go tomorrow in the Koppenberg as well, because that's also not usually a parcours that you'd see Alvarado do well in, and if she wasn't able to produce it today in Overijse, it might be a bit of an issue.
Yeah, she might still opt out of racing the Koppenberg, of course. We'll know that tomorrow. We'll touch upon the Koppenberg cross in a minute. First, let's run down the entire top 10. Capablanca Vash becoming the second youngest World Cup winner after Marianne Vos, who won her first World Cup at 16. Ahead of Pieterse, who is now the youngest podium sitter in the World Cup after Marianne Vos. Then we have Lucinda Brandt in third ahead of Denise Betsema. These two are now tied in the overall. Brandt leads based on her last result, which is the third place here. Fifth place, Clara Honsinger. Solid ride by her. Sixth place, Lien Burquier. Seventh, Jara Kastelein ahead of Sherin van Anrooy. Another French rider, Amandie Foucounet, ending 9th. And then Silvia Persico in 10th. Plenty of riders we need to talk about. Let's start with Lien Burquier. I once again take my hat off for her performance. Last week she got 8th in Zonhoven and now 6th here. First year under 23. This is really something very special.
Managing to stay out of trouble in the first lap by also not going into the pits and able to ride an amazing race. Not looking out of place in that top 10 at all. And this is really exciting to have her this close to all the action and just amazing performances in back-to-back weeks.
And I noticed that it's not only the power, it's also the technique, the way that she hops off her bike and then shoulders it. It looks solid. Usually you see with these young riders that they either are great or that they lack a bit of technical abilities and they need years to become like decent in it. But for Burquier it already looks decent. So yeah, I think she's definitely somebody we need to keep in the back of our head next week when we have the European Championships. Pieterse will race under 23. For Vos, apparently she will race the elite race there. This is unconfirmed, I must say. I only heard it via Alvarado somewhere in an interview, but be aware that that can still change. But Burquier definitely a contender next week, and I mean, I guess we can say the same for Foucounet, the French champion, 9th place here. Issam said that she could get a top 10 in our preview podcast, and she did. Issam, props to you.
Yeah, I don't know if I said it on or off record, but I know that I mentioned it for sure, and it was still, I would say that, she in France she had very good results, but you never know how that will result international wise in a way, if she's gonna be able to transform that into a top 10 in a World Cup. But she definitely was having some good days there in France, so I think it's very good. But about Burquier, I mean, I just hope that she's not going to cross back to mountain bike, because she is a world champion under 19 in the mountain bike. She is already a world champion under 19 for the European Championships. So she knows how to handle a bike, and I think that comes from the mountain biking. So I'm interested to see if she's able to stay in cyclocross while doing the mountain bike, and not like a lot of riders already did under 19 and under 23, to only focus then on the mountain biking later on in their career.
A final mention here would be on Silvia Persico, who ended 9th here. Foucounet was 10th. The result just switched in front of my eyes, so I assume that was a photo finish that got changed, but a very impressive performance by the young Italian nevertheless. We already saw for the first time in the USA World Cups. She of course had a crash in Iowa, and outside of that she barely missed out on the top 10, but now finally she got that top 10. Very impressive stuff.
Yeah, Persico with another very good performance, and finally indeed getting that reward for some very good performances in the US as well. Really making that step up this season to be the main woman of the team.
Yeah, I also want to touch up on Alicia Frank. I think she was struggling a little bit in a couple of races, but again today at 11th place, I think this is very strong. I definitely feel that she's gonna be able to finish in the top 10 in a World Cup, and she's getting closer and closer. So I think also first Belgium rider, Kant really struggling. I would say it's not really going well for Kant, and I hope she can turn it around in a way. But it's looking every time it's looking harder and harder. But I think for Frank a very, very good result.
Yeah, definitely think a solid result here for Alicia Frank. I can't say the same about Inger van der Heijden. She had a very rapid start, was in 4th, but big blow up, ending 15th in the end. But hey, at least she tried. It's not a parcours that I associate with van der Heijden, but I mean, I don't associate the Koppenberg with her tomorrow either, but I still think that we should take a look ahead at the Koppenberg cross tomorrow. Of course, a mythical cross. Let's actually start by taking a look at the women's race as we are talking about it. We see that in the women's race, I think almost all the big names that we saw here today at the start will also be there tomorrow. Only the number 2 of today's race, Pieterse, won't be at the start line. I personally think that is a wise decision. She is focusing on the World Cup, which with 16 races isn't a bad decision. But do you guys then think that Vos is the clear favorite tomorrow? Or do you guys look at riders like Brandt, or maybe some specialists like Kastelein, who had a decent race today, or even Arzoufi?
I think also you have to take a look at Brandt, Betsma, Honsinger, all very capable women, of course, on that type of parcours. But Vos, after today's performance, certainly has to be on top of that conversation.
I also think that we need to mention Clara Honsinger, 5th place today. Again, not a great start, saved by not pitting, but then missed. I think she's just a slow starter, because after the first lap she was lapping roughly the same pace as the leaders. I think tomorrow a bit more climbing. Of course, don't forget Honsinger only came over this week, so she hasn't been training here a lot. She has a bit of jet lag issues. I think 5th place today was strong. I wouldn't be surprised to see her at the front tomorrow. And of course, we haven't mentioned last year's winner, Annemarie Worst. She didn't ride today. A bit of a strange story around that. She has some sort of knee injury after Ruddervoorde, which is why she skipped Zonhoven. Why she skipped Overijse, no clue. Maybe after Zonhoven she thought, okay, World Cup classification is already in the bin, I'll focus on the X2O trophy. Any expectations for Worst tomorrow?
Yeah, I must say that I am in a way expect something, but also it's with some question marks. It's not really. It's very hard to place her in a way. I think that we can expect her to be in the top 10 for sure. I guess that's like very safe to say. But if she's really going to be able to fight for a podium, look, I think Overijse took a toll on a lot of riders, and that might help her. But then again, is she 100% or not? That is going to be the big question mark.
I think tomorrow will definitely tell us something about Vorst and Kastelein. I mean, we have said it throughout the past races. Okay, we know the talent is there, but these two riders, they really always excel on the Koppenberg. And if we don't really see that type of performance tomorrow, then I guess it's clear to say that their downwards trend has continued, or the rest has stepped up. That's a bit of a guess, but I think tomorrow will definitely be important for them, and the same goes for Arzoufi, who was good in Zonhoven. Of course, we don't know the full stories of the race today. I would have expected her to do a bit better than 18th place, or 17th, I must say, but I think for these type of riders, tomorrow will definitely be a telling day. If they are disappointing there, it really says something about their overall condition, because the Koppenberg doesn't lie. The strongest rider will always win, except of course if he or she has a mechanical or a crash, but the Koppenberg doesn't lie. Let's not touch upon that for too long, so let's go straight to making some predictions for the women's podium. Issam, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think that I'm going for Vash winning on the Koppenberg, and then second place for Lucinda Brandt, and I think then third for Clara Honsinger.
Twan, what do you think?
I would like to go with. I'm a bit scared of a back-to-back victory for Vash. I don't know. Of course, she's a bit young, so I don't want to go with that. Lucinda Brandt for the victory, ahead of Catablanca Vash, and in third place Denise Betsema.
I will not be going with Lucinda Brandt. I didn't really like what I saw from her today. She lacked a bit of power on the uphill. She was outpaced by Kastelein until Kastelein eventually cracked, but I am going to go with a bit of a surprise win here for Clara Honsinger, taking the win ahead of Jara Kastelein, and then in third place I think we will find Annemarie Worst. I would like to make one final tip here for the Koppenberg Cross. I would like to tip Millie Cousins for potentially a top 10 or top 15 finish. I think that she will do well tomorrow, but a short focus on the men's race, only 30 starters. I guess it is fair to say that we will be looking towards Elie Iserbyt to win 3 years in a row here.
Yeah, we're looking into Elie Iserbyt winning. I guess I think that is. If I had to predict, I would definitely say that he is the guy, and I think we're not gonna look to a very different podium than we had today, to be honest, or at least in Overijse. I think Iserbyt is probably going to be the winner, and then Van Toerenhout's going to be very close by, followed, I guess, by Toon Aerts.
Yeah, Issam, I agree on that, especially considering the absence of Quinten Hermans, who is focusing on the Super Prestige and World Cup. You can't do it all, and considering he is pretty good in those classifications, that makes sense, but I would agree probably Iserbyt and the Aerts will be our main guys to look at tomorrow. Potentially a Lars van der Haar. He has had some good years on the Koppenberg, but with all the rain and mud, then I will probably be looking at the same podium. I don't really think there is much to say. Koppenberg is just that tad harder than Overijse, but they don't really differ that much, and considering that all the under 23 guys fall out and Hermans isn't there either, I would say that these are really the 3-4 guys, considering that Zweek doesn't like this type of parkour. Well, let's make some predictions then for our men's race. As I get to go first, I will be going with a win for, I'm backing my guy Toon Aerts again ahead of Elie Iserbyt and Michael van Toerenhout.
I think we'll see back-to-back victories for Elie Iserbyt, with Toon Aerts coming in second place and Van Toerenhout rounding out the podium.
Yeah, I kind of said all mine already. Yeah. I think it's gonna be just the same podium as Overijse. It's gonna be boring results, but I think Iserbyt will win it again back to back, and then Van Toornout in second because I sense that he is very strong, and then in third Toon Aerts.
Well, then we've had it for this episode of the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Twan and Issam, thank you once again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for hosting.
And tomorrow we'll be back with a podcast about the Koppenberg Cross, the first round of the X2O Badkamerstrofee. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will be back as said tomorrow. Goodbye.